Hello, thank you so much for looking in on my video about Stratton's Tower. Stratton's Tower is situated in a village called Little Berkhamsted, which is situated in a beautiful area of a special character and conservation area and greenbelt land that's situated north of Potters Bar and the M25 and south of the A414 running between Hatfield and Hertford. And indeed I think that you get just a glimpse of it as you travel along the A414 from Hatfield to Hertford. On a clear day you can see it on the skyline. This tower, which is situated on top of Robin's Nest Hill in Little Berkhamsted. Little Berkhamsted is a charming village. Many of the houses there are Georgian listed buildings, beautiful cottages and some huge mansion houses. One is called Danes Manor, which is a luxury Georgian 8-bedroomed house which is rented out for doing film shoots for the film industry and photographic shoots as well. In the village there's a nice village hall and cricket pavilion, a super cricket club, a wonderful pub called the Five Horseshoes, and there's a wonderful village shop which is more like a delicatessen. You go in there and they've got beautifully home-baked goods and wonderful things, foods available there, perhaps reflecting that very nice well-to-do people live in the area. Stratton's Tower is an absolutely magnificent building. There's quite a lot of debate about why it was built, but we do know it was built in 1789. Now, according to a book written by Barbara Jones, she said that it was a retired admiral who built it so that he could look at ships plying up and down the Thames. Similarly, in John Lucas's book, which was written in 1990, he said this tall, handsome red brick building known as Stratton's Folly was a folly indeed. He said that it was built as an observatory in order that its owner, John Stratton, a retired admiral, could stand on the battlements and see ships plying up and down the Thames. In fact, a practical impossibility. The admiral destroyed all the documents relating to the building because he did not want his heirs to know how much it cost to build. But a lot of doubt about this. Indeed, in the Hert's Mercury in 1888, there's mention of the Little Berkhamsted Monument. It's said that the Mercury believes it was built for the purposes of being an observatory for the gentleman of Stratton, the owner of the property, and after his decease it was not used and it gradually fell into a state of dilapidation, being known then to the villagers by the name of Stratton's Folly. Being an object of interest, says the account, standing on such an elevated position and can be seen for many miles. The reporter remembers climbing up the decayed staircase many years ago and being well rewarded by the delightful seeing all around the top. The article says that there are different stories. One that was called Stratton's Folly, and in this version of the story is Mr. Stratton was not an admiral but a ship owner who wanted to receive early intelligence of the arrival of his vessels at the port of London and erected his tower expecting to be able to command the mouth of the Thames from this point with the aid of a telescope. However, the story that the Mercury in 1888 preferred to believe that it was purely a prospect tower and built so that you could get an extensive view. That's interesting as well because Stratton could not have been an admiral, it said, because he was a nonconformist and the services did not take on nonconformists. Now, the current owner of Stratton's Tower is a Mr. David Cooper, who actually resides at the tower, and a few years ago he had held an open day when people could come and visit the grounds of the tower, and to accompany that he printed a very interesting and helpful fact sheet all about the tower. And in that he states there has been much speculation as to John Stratton's reason for building the tower, but the earliest known reference to the tower accompanies a watercolour sketch captioned Prospect Tower at Little Berkhamsted, Herts, which dates from sometime before May 1799. The watercolour is accompanied by the following text. At Little Berkhamsted is a very handsome tower built with bricks of a circular form and with an octagonal base. The top is a lead flat with battlements from which are fine prospects. It was built for a pleasure house and has several apartments in the different stages. He states that the tower is 96 feet high, that it's a Georgian tower and it's a graded listed 2 building, says David Cooper, but he states quite categorically, although it is a prospect tower, not a folly. It is not a folly. It was probably built in 1789 by John Stratton, gentleman, despite stories to the contrary, which appear to have originated in several books, in particular the book Follies and Grottos by Barbara Jones. John Stratton most certainly was not an admiral, retired or otherwise. He was still only in his 30s when the tower was built. Very interesting though whether or not it's a folly, because what is a prospect tower? A prospect tower is a tower that is built for views, is my understanding. But I've looked around the country and there are hundreds of prospect towers all over the United Kingdom, and many of them are called follies. The point is as well, is many of these prospect towers are called both follies and prospect towers. So it's possible, in my opinion, for prospect tower to be a folly. What is a folly? Well, a folly is a building that is built that is pretty much totally useless, built at expense and has little purpose at all. But from my point of view, this tower isn't completely a folly, because there were apartments originally built in this tower, it would appear from David Cooper has found. But from my point of view, the architecture, having battlements on a building when they're just decorative rather than being useful battlements, is a bit of a folly really. So it's really interesting, isn't it, that the Victorian style of building, they adopted old ways of building. And not many people know this, but there actually is a folly that is a tower in the town of Hertford. It was originally in the garden of a residence of number 2 North Road in Hertford, but the land has been split and it now comes into the land belonging to the Bean River View retirement home and the Bean River View flats for the elderly. I've actually seen it because I've been there. In my opinion, it is a complete folly because it was built as a fake ruin. Here's a picture of it. You can see it's got ruined walls. It's got neo-Romanesque style stone dressings. It's got a fake Norman style archway. It's got all sorts of ornamental retro style architecture features dating from the Middle Ages. And that, in my opinion, is a complete folly because it's purely decorative and completely useless. So there we are. It would be nice actually if the people of Hertford could have the occasional opportunity. I think would be wonderful if the owners of Bean Riverview could have an occasional open day and allow the people of Hertford to go and visit this splendid folly that exists. And I don't think many people know it's there. So Bean Riverview, just off Cowbridge and Port Vale, but if you can imagine, the gardens stretch back from London Road, but the garden area has all been divided up and sold off in different lots. There you can see it's an actual real folly. Now in the 1960s there was an absolute row about the Stratton's Tower. John Lucas, in his book Hertfordshire Curiosities, stated that in the 1960s its then owner, the then owner of Stratton's Tower, based in Little Berkhamsted, was Mr. William Tatton Brown, who was an architect, having rescued it from disrepair, sought planning permission to convert it into residential accommodation. A public inquiry was held, and there were objections from neighbours who complained that they would be overlooked, and among them an MP who lived nearby, and said that because he sunbathed in the nude, it would be an invasion of his privacy. He didn't actually state who the MP was, but I understand that famous cabinet minister, actually, Mr. Reginald Morling, used to live in Little Berkhamsted, so I presume he was referring to that. Also, in the national newspaper on Sunday, printed in 1967, was an article in the Sunday People, right next to this article about this frustrated mother who wanted to get rid of her son, who was a male stripper, from her home. Was this headline, right next to it, was this headline article about Stratton's Tower, stating, "Man of the People tells a planning officer to think again." The Man of the People, Sunday People, says, "I call this Doubleday's folly." They call it Stratton's folly, the 90-foot red brick tower dominating the lovely countryside after the late Mr. Stratton, a land-owning giant who built the thing 180 years ago. But I propose a new name, Doubleday's folly, after Mr. Ernest Doubleday, the Hertfordshire County Planning Officer. Mr. Doubleday apparently would sooner see the tower become a dilapidated eyesore than it being used as a home for human beings. The article goes on, says that Mr. Tatton Brown, Minister of Health Chief Architect, and that surely it would be best for it to be converted back into a residential building. And actually, I agree, because originally, as the current owner, Mr. Cooper, points out, it was originally built with a couple of apartments in it. So why not restore it back? After a big row, Mr. Tatton Brown did get consent to convert it into a residential building. It would appear he did a lovely job. It was converted into living accommodation in 1971 by William Tatton Brown, and he rented it out to David Cooper, who eventually bought the building, and I think it was the right thing to do. It's a nice building. The dimensions are, as Mr. Cooper very helpfully points out, that it's 96 foot high. London Bridge is about 17 miles a little to the east of due south. David Cooper points out that on a clear day you can actually see from the top of the tower, you can actually see over Epping Green into the City of London. The construction is essentially a series of 4 boxes, octagonal at the base, surmounted by 3 circular sections. This gives the structure great strength with retaining sufficient flexibility to withstand high winds. When the wind is particularly strong, there can be significant movement in the upper 2 stories, and in extreme conditions, some movement has been felt even in the library. So the accommodation, we've got kitchen, breakfast room and entrance on the ground floor. Then it goes 16 steps up to the mezzanine floor with a gallery, washroom, toilet and shower room. 15 steps up, first bedroom. 26 to the library. 30 steps, the second bedroom. 26 steps, the third bedroom. 13 steps, next 13 steps, observation room, and then you've got the roof. So there you are, you've got 2 bedrooms and a library, and the extension that Mr. Cooper has built is very nice indeed and very appropriate and fitting with the current tower. So there we are, and I think it's a really nice thing that David Cooper's done is to allow occasional open days, and he's done this extensive research. I'm very, very into the Stratton family, printed this wonderful, interesting leaflet. For another video, we'll no doubt be talking about the Folly and Ware, which is a wonderful grotto, Scots grotto. I think there are these follies everywhere, all over the place. and they're amazing. They were built really as attractions, and the Scotswallow was built really to get visitors to come to the house and the garden. In a nice visitors book, all these people with too much money to burn built these lovely follies so that they could compete with each other, saying, I've got a bigger folly than you in my garden, I've got a bigger tower. And there you are. And there was a real appetite for retro style architecture. And Nebworth House, again, lots of retro Gothic style architecture all over that. It's not really, it could be a folly, but we don't call it a folly because it's a house, somebody lives in it. So that's my demarcation, is if the building has a purpose, useful, that people live in it, it's not really a folly. And pretty much the man of the people was saying similar, in that it felt strongly that Mr. Doubleday, the chief planner for Hertfordshire at the time in 1967, was saying it should remain a folly, unused, and not be a useful building. Well, I'm glad that it has become a nice residential place. What a fabulous place it must be to live in. If you want to sunbathe, well, put up your parasol. Anyway, all the very best. Please give this video a lovely thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. You'll be very welcome. Thank you so much for looking in on this video. All the very best now. Bye bye.